been trying to change the lights, but I just can't. Whatever way I put it, the light isn't right. And anyway, this is not so much for the looking, but more for the reading, and my reading and listening for you. I'm reading Life in Spirit, written by Harry Edwards in 1976. It was published, and he was a well-renowned healer, a spiritual healer, and an author of many books. And this one, as I said, was published in 1976. And this is the story, he says, of John and Mary. Any John, any Mary, brother, sister, husband and wife, sweethearts, friends. The story of you and me. But with this difference, John and Mary have died and have entered into their new life in spirit. So I'm now at chapter 4. I've written chapter 1, 2 and 3 and the foreword, and I'm now chapter 4. These are quite short chapters, that's why I thought I'm just going to read this now, and it will be chapter after chapter. So, chapter 4. John enters into his spirit life. It is undeniable that at the termination of physical life, the individual enters into another form of his existence to which he is akin. Following his transition from the physical into the spirit phase, he enters into a way of life without any marked change within himself, possessing his personality, his memories, and his feelings of love and emotion, and whatever knowledge he possesses of the usage of science or the appreciation of art. He does not suddenly become an archangel. The wisdom he acquires as he progresses on is not given to him on a plate. He will need to acquire it in an understanding way, step by step. He will still possess form, eyes to see and hands to feel with. He will need raiment and a place in which to dwell. We need to remember that by means of clairvoyance, the dear ones who have passed into spirit life are eager to make themselves known through mediumship. Through absent healing, it is proven that a sick person in any part of this planet can be found, diagnosed, treated, and probably healed. The means by which this takes place may well be through the prescribed thought energies, which are common to both spirit and earthly life. Observations on thought energy and how this may operate will be dealt with in later pages. It is therefore a reasonable assumption that a person's dear ones in spirit life are aware, in all normal circumstances, of the expected arrival. This may not be immediately operative in the case of an unexpected and violent transition from this life into spirit life, such as with a violent death or mental distress in an extremely painful passing, a mind possessing fear, and so on. For it is acceptable that those suffering from distressing conditions may arrive into spirit life with their outlooks and mind still very conscious of the ill conditions they had been suffering from. If this should be the case, it follows that arrangements would be made for the reception of people suffering in those ways, and which, according to our ways of thought, would be a period of care, convalescence, giving time for the fears and distresses to disappear and to open the sick person's outlook gradually to the new way of life into which he has entered. Here again, spirit friends and relatives would be able to give the comfort and love such a sick person would require. If we can proceed with a person who has normal faculties, whom I will call the entrant, we will find he becomes conscious of the absence of processes to which he has long been accustomed. If the argument holds that in the dimension of spirit there is a complete absence of physical processes, then the entrant will find that he has no longer the need for breathing in air to provide the nutrients his body needs. Oxygen should no longer be needed to sustain life. There's no longer any need for the body to be cleansed of physical impurities, such as carbon dioxide and other forms of unwanted matter. The entrant will no longer need the use of his lungs to act as bellows for him to make speech. He may become conscious that no longer does he have a heartbeat. For sure, there would no longer be any need for the circulation of blood to provide the oxygen and the nutrients the billions of cells comprising the flesh and bones of his body normally require to keep them warm and healthy. As he realizes this, then the inference follows the inference follows that of course he will not need food or drink or to maintain his strength and his health state. As he studies himself, he will confirm that he still has his main body structure, his head, his neck, his body, and his limbs. He will observe that he can move his fingers at will and that he can move by walking, showing him that he is still an entity, that he has control of himself, and therefore he must still retain his orderly mind and possess a form of intelligence similar to that performed by the brain in early life, in order that his mind can give an instruction to his legs for him to walk, or for his hands to appreciate and hold something. He will know that his eyes can see and that his ears can hear, and by this means a report can be given to his mind to enable it to appreciate what he sees, hears, feels, and so forth. If he is met by his dear ones or any other spirit person, his observing mind will see that they too possess form, that they can talk, walk, communicate with each other, that they can move about and walk about in bodily form. So his mind will conclude that he is still himself possessing his mental and sensory faculties, but that he has inherited a different kind of body to his previous physical one, namely his spirit one. As he feels the touch of his friend's hands in greeting, so he feels that he is conscious of the contact being a far more living nature than he could remember before. His memory comparison of his touch with his dear ones while on earth seems as if he was wearing gloves, as if compared to the present new experience of life being with life, feeling the purity and intensity of his dear one's love for him. The act of touching is magnetic, not as from one person to another, but an expression of joint inner love and affection. He notes the difference between the touch of his mother's hands with an intensity of oneness, conveying a warmness of homely feeling, and different to when he held the hands of his dear wife, who had preceded him into spirit a few years before, for with her clasping there was an expression of ecstasy and light which lifted him above all else. The entrant then began to experience a feeling of lightness throughout his total self, both his body and his mind. He was exuberantly happy to be with his dear ones again. His body felt lighter too, and as he walked along with them, he was not so much conscious of muscular movement. He hardly felt the contact between his feet and the ground he was travelling over. His hands and arms were free. His head and body moved as if there was no impediment to the movement. He felt as if he had been reborn, free, his body and self no longer shrouded in a physical need to do something or experience anything, emerging from a cloying mist of being held back, leaving behind a darkened state of life and coming into a new one in which there was light, gladness, and freedom. With the preliminary greetings over, the company moved along with the entrant, John, and his wife, Mary, walking along together. Note: on 4 occasions I have been asked to intercede for extreme cases. Within hours the patient has died, and the doctor have declared life is extinct. One case was a young woman whose breathing had ceased, and she had been laid out in preparation for her burial. When her people went into the death room the next morning to attend to the burning candles, they found her awake, her eyes shining, and asking for breakfast. The second case was a young woman, one of the author's nieces, who had a tractor run over and crush her chest. Her mother, the author's sister and a healer, went to her, and she did not die, though she knew she had been killed and had died. She is alive today and a mother. She declares she knew she had been killed. The other 2 cases are similar. The patients, men, were victims of car smashes. I was telephoned as soon as they were admitted to hospital, and it was known that they would not live through the next 24 hours, asking for any spiritual help to reach them and so pass to spirits peacefully. In both cases, the 2 men were up and about the next day. They knew they had died. The common denominator which links these 4 stories is that in each case the patients knew they had died and had arrived into spirit, where they were so happy it was as a disappointment to find that they had returned to earth life. I question whether 3 of the 4 people knew anything of the spiritualist case for survival. Now back to John. He was amazed at the tireless effort of travelling. His mind felt too occupied to take in all that he saw, and he will tell us about this later. John did ask Mary, where are you taking me? And he accepted it as being quite natural when she said to him, I am taking you to the place where I have been waiting for you. But before then, we must go and arrange for something suitable for you to wear. It was only then that John realized that he was still wearing a shadowy form of clothes he wore on earth. And so it was that they entered into a place which in earthly terms he would describe as a textile exhibition. They were greeted by a venerable person who was one of the teachers of the art of material designing. As he spoke with John and Mary, so John could see that he was looking into him as if he knew him, and from this the teacher took them to a display of materials. The teacher explained to John that as he became more used to spirit life and was able to be aware of values which up to this time he had not been able to comprehend, he would be able to appreciate more and more the beauty of the material and its design. For now, he suggested a simple material with a simple design motif, and with this selection, John was very pleased. John was remembering from his earthly experience how cloth was made from cotton plant and from the wool of animals and their skin. He also remembered how in later years science had developed the art of manufacturing synthetic materials. So he turned to the teacher and asked him how it was that such beautiful material could be made, for already he found it easy to divorce from his mind the earthly means of manufacturing material. Already his mind was relinquishing thoughts of thousands of sheep being sheared, and of vast areas of factory floor space occupied by long rows of clattering spinning machinery, at each of which was a worker with anxious eyes studying every revolving thread bobbin. No more could he associate clothing factories cutting out scores of layers of cloth into shapes for making garments of a set size, or the array of suits and dresses in their size and outsize numbers to fit the shapes of different human beings. In reply, the teacher said to him, it would take a long time for you to understand this color and design, for your experience at present is limited to this primitive standard of earth life. We first have to show you how energy is adapted into a character phase, which will reflect the thought intention of the designer to represent his vision and faculty to love and care for what he produces. The more advanced his progressive affinity becomes to interpret his intentions into a composite pattern, to picture his ambitions, so will the quality of the material reflect this. So it is, John, that the material which has been chosen for you is one which you yourself have appreciated simply, and is of a nature akin to your understanding and appreciation of beauty in the cloth. As good changes take place within you, so you will be able to observe a greater depth of beauty in another material, and this will be one of the measures of your advancement in the values which control all life here. The teacher then added, those who engage on material and design here do so for long as they have purpose as part of their progressive appreciation of the beauty of the laws of creation. This applies to those who are, to use your earth terms, scientists, designers, architects, artists, sailors, tailors, and so forth. There is no reward for their services other than the inner happiness and the pleasure it gives them to use what gifts they have to create materials of simplicity and beauty, and to know how to fashion them to suit the state of advancement and the character of the person to whom the material will be fashioned as a garment. There are no shortcuts here. There is only the love of the craft which they are part of, and you will find, John, whenever you travel along in this orderly path with this, your new life, you will see all things which are worthwhile come from the love of craftsmanship, even down to its minutest detail. Life here is not measured by clocks. Time as you have known it does not exist. The only measurement in time is to the person concerned in producing the satisfaction in what on which he is engaged. John was deeply impressed by all that. He had been told many questions arose in his mind, and he said to Mary, I do not feel tired. No one seems to feel tired. What happens when night comes? Do you need sleep? Sorry, it's my dog. Come on, then. I almost lost my space now. What happens when night comes? Do you need sleep? Mary held his hands a little tighter as she smiled and said, already by your Earth time much has gone by since you arrived here, but you're not tired, for there is no part of yourself that can tire, except your conscience and your endeavor. There is no night. Day and night belongs to Earth times. But we do have our homes, where we can retire into for ourselves, a retreat where, looking within oneself, one can learn more of the divine plan of which we are all part. We will go there now, that we may be together, for this is the time of reunion, the place which time has allowed by the separation in our love for each other. So Mary took him to her house, and on arrival there, waiting for him, was John's new spirit robe. Have a lovely Saturday. Bye-bye.